1989 saw the end of the classic series of Doctor Who. After fighting a losing battle for around 4 years and being looked down upon by the general public and those within the BBC, Doctor Who was put on hiatus after its 26th season. This hiatus would be lifted ever so briefly in 1996, before being stomped back down again until 2005, when the show finally returned back to television. But what if the show was given more of an opportunity to save itself? What if Doctor Who was never put on hiatus in the winter of '89? What would have become of the show had it went through the 1990s? And how different would it be compared to our own version of the show if it lasted up to the modern day? Hello, my name's Optical Spectre, and this is Doctor Who, the cancelled years. In this series I'll be showcasing my thoughts on what Doctor Who would have been like if it wasn't cancelled in 1989. With the basic premise now out the way, let's find out what would happen in this episode. Season 34 would have been the first full season for Jim Broadbent as the Ninth Doctor. This season would have had a different feel to the past 4 to 6 seasons, with stories written to better suit this new Doctor. Nothing too major would have happened between this season and the last one. The only noticeable thing that would have happened would have been the title sequence introducing the new BBC logo, which was introduced in October in 1997. The first story would have been The Hunt, a single part story written by Mark Gatiss. The Hunt would essentially have been Doctor Who does Terminator. The story would have focused on a young woman named Sophia Brown, and we would have saw into her everyday life. However, all about her life is about to change when she notices when she is walking home that she is being stalked and threatened by a mysterious stranger. She is rescued by 2 people claiming to be agents named Smith and Sanders, who we know to be the Doctor and Patricia. They explain to her that they are time travellers who are here to protect Sophie from the stranger stalking her down, known as Quebec 204. Who is a cyborg hitman who was sent back in time to kill Sophie. They explain that in 40 years' time in Earth's history, she will become President of the United States and will become the first person to make contact with an alien lifeform on behalf of the Earth, which results in Earth being invaded by the aliens 250 years later. Quebec 204 was a cyborg created by the company named the AAL to go back in time and prevent Sophie from making contact with the aliens. During a trip to the Earth's future, the Doctor learns of the AAL's plans and goes back in time to prevent Quebec 204 from killing Sophie. And while Sophie's death could result in the Earth not being invaded, it involved the web of time cracking and the Doctor must prevent that from happening. The story would have played out very similar to 1984's The Terminator and would have ended in the exact same way, with Quebec 204 being crushed by a machine. It also would have at one point had some really nice dialogue from the Doctor telling Sophie about how everyone and everything is special. While the story is considered average and nothing more, it would have received heavy criticism about it being basically a knockoff Terminator movie. The second story would have been The Burning Nebula, a 2-part story written by Mark Platt. The Burning Nebula would have saw the reappearance of Kate O'Mara's Rani, who was last seen in the 30th anniversary special. The story would have saw the Rani stealing a powerful crystal named the Burning Nebula from the planet Limpid, and using it to power a machine she's invented named Dragon's Breath, which she can use to conquer any planet she wishes. The story would have saw the Doctor and Patricia trying to find the Rani and stopping their devious plans, while trying to find a way to save Limpid, as without the Burning Nebula, the planet will shrink and shrink until there is nothing left of it. This would have been Kate O'Mara's final appearance as the Rani, and it also would have been the final Rani story for the foreseeable future. The decision to kill off the Rani would have been done by Lynn Grant, who disliked the Rani's character, as she thought she wasn't a very good character and was described as the master with tits. So she got Mark Platt to write a Rani story which would kill her off, but leaving the window open for a future showrunner to revive the character in a new incarnation if they so wished to. Even with the legendary Mark Platt writing this story, it would have been considered crap and boring. The third story would have been Corruption of Time, a single part story written by Russell T Davies. Corruption of Time would have been a Gallifrey story, as Gallifrey stories would have been quite popular in the 1990s, and it would have acted as a sequel to 1993's Election Day. The story would have saw the Doctor being called to Gallifrey by Leela, as Romana has recently been acting weird, and has had a drastic change in personality, which has resulted in some new and edgy rules being put in place. And in 24 hours she'll be inviting a race of war-heavy aliens known as the Gartrans to Gallifrey in hopes of an alliance, which could put the entire planet at risk from a Gartran invasion. The story would have been split into two plots which would have interlinked with each other. The first plot would have saw the Doctor investigating into Romana's recent changes and the new rules she's applied to Gallifrey. The second plot would have involved Leela and Patricia finding a Time Lady played by Chloe Annette, clearly dealing with post-regenerative stress. The two help Ada back to normal. When the Time Lady comes around, she starts to think that she is Colleen. Eventually all the pieces of the story come together. Sometime between the events of this story and 1994's goth opera, Colleen's mind was strong enough to break out of suspension, and when she was alone, snapped Romana's neck and took her form, with everyone believing Colleen to be Romana. Colleen puts Romana into a stasis booth just mere seconds before she can start regenerating, and with nothing holding her back, Colleen can now shape Gallifrey into the planet she wants. However, the stasis booth broke down, which unfroze Romana and continued her regeneration into her third incarnation, played by Chloe Annette. The final part of the story would have saw the Doctor, Patricia, and the new Romana chasing after Colleen, who is now being revealed to be Colleen and not Romana too. And once they catch up with her, they imprison her in a dwarf star alloy chamber, a room where nothing can get through. No light, no radio waves, no sound, or even time for that matter. But time will go on for Colleen as she waits to be freed and slowly going mad in the chamber. While an average story, many old fans of the show would have been annoyed at the fact that there was a new Romana, as they didn't like Chloe Annette's Romana. They thought that Lalla Ward should have stayed in the part of Romana, with even Ward herself later stating that she was convinced by Lynn Grant to step down and would have wanted to do many more years in the show. The fourth story would have been Placebo Effect, a two-part story written by Gary Russell. Placebo Effect would have saw the return of the Wyvern, last seen in Season 12's The Ark in Space. The story would have been set on Macorba's world, where the 3999 Olympics are being held. By 3999 the Olympics had become intergalactical and could be hosted by any species on any planet, and of any species being involved in the races. The story would have saw security patrols vanishing in dark tunnels beneath the surface of the planet. The Doctor and Patricia work with Miss Sox, who is the head of security, to investigate the disappearances and the new performance-enhancing drug which is being used by some of the athletes. They find that the Wyvern are responsible. The Wyvern are kidnapping people and turning them into Wyvern. They are also responsible for the drug which is slowly turning the athletes into Wyvern and are planning to spread the taint throughout the galaxy. The story would have saw the Doctor trying to stop the Wyvern's plan while coming up with an antidote for the athletes who took the Wyvern drug. And while he is able to find the drug that will cure the people who took the Wyvern drug, some of the athletes will never recover from the experience. While unintentional, the story would have acted as a warning about drugs and taken them into sport, as they could result in horrible side effects down the road. The fifth story would have been Time Travel, a two-part story written by Steve Lyons. Time travel would have essentially been Doctor Who does Back to the Future. The story would have saw the Doctor taking Patricia through Earth's history and taking her to the year 2020 to see how different things were 30 years before her time. However, the time is cut short when the Doctor spots a man holstering a weapon in his pocket and is clearly intending to use it. And mere seconds before the man can shoot a boy, the Doctor is able to stop the man by grabbing a gun out of his hand. After helping the boy, who the Doctor finds is called Lee, home, Patricia asks if she can go visit her family in 2050. However, when the two arrive back in 2050, they find that the city has become a war zone. Hundreds of people living in the now abandoned train stations, and the streets are a battlefield where no man or woman is safe, and some people are out to kill anyone they see. They find that the city is being controlled by a mafia-like gang named the Seal of Blood, and the leader of the gang is none other than Lee, the same Lee the Doctor saved 30 years ago. Somehow, by saving Lee, he goes on to join a gang, and through that gang manages to overthrow the government and take over the city. The story would have saw the Doctor going back in time throughout different points in Lee's life to try and prevent him from corrupting the town. It would have saw the Doctor and Patricia guiding Lee's life down a different and better path, which ends with him becoming a father and a well-respected person within his town. While the story is clearly inspired by the Back to the Future franchise, it wouldn't have received as much disapproval as The Hunt did, as the story concept felt more original, and there would have been a line in the story at one point where Patricia said everything going on is a bit Back to the Future-y. The final story would have been Beings of War, a two-part story written by Colin Brake. Beings of War would have been the first proper look into the Sontaran and Rutan War. While it had been mentioned in multiple Sontaran stories, this would have been the first actual look into the war on television. The story would have saw a Sontaran squad taking over a peaceful colony world and are using it as a military base. The people of the planet send out a distress signal and the Doctor picks it up, but once he learns that the Sontarans are occupying it, he can't do anything as he is not allowed to get involved with the Sontaran and Rutan War. And while he'll help the people where he can't beat the Sontarans off the planet, as he would be interfering in something too big for him. Patricia abandons the Doctor and joins a resistance group, as she doesn't want to just sit around while people suffer. The story would have mostly followed Patricia for the first half, as we see her helping out people and preparing for war against the Sontarans. The Doctor ends up being dragged into the events just over halfway through the story, as too many people are being hurt or even killed. And together with the people of the planet, Patricia and the Doctor are able to push the Sontarans off-world. However, it ends with the once peaceful planet being permanently battle-scarred. And that would have concluded season 34. It would have been considered a really bad season, easily one of the poorest of the 1990s, and it would have been looked back upon as pretty shit. And while it tries to have some freshness to it, the quality of some stories has had a noticeable drop. And so that's the end of this video. So join me next time when we'll be looking at season 35, where we'll see the first New Who story, a story set entirely on board the TARDIS, and a bonus mini-story which will end up being one of the worst things Doctor Who has ever done. So until then, goodbye.